안녕하십니까. 2023년 광주경안 정상어학원 에이스 디베이트 배틀에 오신 여러분 모두 환영합니다. 저는 중등 에이스 팀장 겸 MA3 활용 담당을 맡은 우여름이라고 합니다. 오늘 이렇게 행사에 참여해 주셔서 너무 진심으로 감사드리고요. 에이스 디베이트 배틀은 광주경안 정상어학원에서 연 1회 개최하는 에이스 최고 레벨 마스터 Ace반 행사이며 아이들 감독 선생님들이 함께 준비한 영어 발표회 무대입니다. 재작년 그리고 작년 코로나로 인해 생방송으로만 진행되었던 올해 이렇게 현장에서 진행할 수 있게 되어서 그 열기가 더욱 뜨거운 것 같습니다. 디베이트 배틀은 총 30여 분간 진행이 될 예정이며 정부는 난민을 수용하는가 라는 뜨거운 이슈로 진행이 될 예정입니다. 저희 아이들이 영어로 토론을 펼칠 예정이니 지켜봐 주시기 바라며 이제 행사를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 행사 진행을 맡아줄 호스트를 소개하겠습니다. MA3반 이승아 학생 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This House today will argue over the motion on the floor that the government of South Korea should not accept refugees. The parents and the upper-level students of JS are now invited as the audience, and our teachers are here to judge the debaters. Audience and judges, please give the debaters a big round of applause when their names are called to come out on stage. The Prime Minister for the government, Leon. The leader of the opposition team, Jessica. The Deputy Prime Minister for the government, Grace. The Deputy Leader of the opposition team, Justin. The Government Whip, Leo. The Opposition Whip, Min. The Reply Speaker of the Government, Mike. The Reply Speaker of the Opposition, Mario. Please enjoy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rian from Gyeongwon JLS, and I am the Prime Minister for the government. The motion on the floor is, this House, the government of Korea should not accept refugees. The government team strongly support this motion. We have two reasons for supporting the motion. I represent two reasons, and my Deputy Prime Minister and the government whip represent the rest. Our first reason is that we do not have enough power to accept all of refugees. Although our country is evaluated as an advanced country, our country is not wealthy enough to invest and support in refugees, who are outsiders in a situation where internal social and economic problems are numerous, and other citizens' problems are unresolved. According to the graph of trends in World Korea economic growth, the graph is almost the same as the global average growth rate. This means that we are not sufficiently advanced in other countries. Yes?
The Prime Minister said that we are not sufficient to accept refugees. But if you look at the refugee receiving countries graph, the Republic of Sudan, Jordan, and Uganda, whose GDPs are lower than ours, had an average of 1.3 million accepted refugees. How can you explain that?
There's no reason why we should not accept refugees if we only compare their GDP with that of Korea. However, Korea is a ceasefire state and the war might restart. In this dangerous situation, do you really want to accept refugees? Although Korea's GDP, semiconductor, SNS is advanced in other countries, it might be very dangerous to accept refugees because of our situation. In addition, Korea has a lot of debts to pay. According to National Statistical Office, Korea's debt stood at 366 trillion won 10 years ago, while its current debt has almost tripled to 960 trillion won. It is too early to support refugees and help in them. In semiconductors, SNS, and media, Korea is considered world-class, but Korea lacks in political and social aspects. To implement a refugee acceptance policy, we must prevent Korea's debts from increasing further and solve all internal social problems. The second reason is that the recent case of other countries, is not successful. If we look at the Germany situation in 2015, the reason for opposing refugees becomes distinct. According to NamoWiki's opposition argument to refugee acceptance, Germany, which has more than twice the size of its economy at 1.6 times the population than Korea, fell into a huge political and social chaos after receiving 1 million refugees. This shows that if our countries accept refugees from all over the world, we won't only face the economic chaos, but also face the vast decrease of country political growth. Therefore, our team strongly claim that we should not support the refugees. We should reconsider whether our country is wealthy enough to invest them, or the other countries accepted refugees is very successful or not. Also, we have to organize policy related with refugee acceptance in order not to get social or political chaos.
Next, the leader of the opposition team, Jessica, will give her speech.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica, and I'm the leader of the opposition team. From now on, I'll persuade you why we should accept refugees. Prime Minister said Korea doesn't need the power to accept. Korea is not wealthy enough to invest in refugees, but we disagree with this argument. Our country has developed into one of the world's leading economies. Also, our infrastructure is well established, and refugees can grow our economy too. Mercury Company, a large company established by Australia's Mercury Group and Korea's Financial Group, is taking lead in Korea's infrastructure. According to IMF, no thanks. According to IMF, Korea's 2022 GDP ranking is 14th out of 195 countries. It is meaningful because even though our economy is in recession, we rank 14th in the world in just over 60 years. We can build more infrastructure based on the economic power. Representatively, large broadcasters, malls, station, apartments are currently entering in Gyeonggi-do, Ilsan. Like this, infrastructure should be not only based in Seoul, but also in the capital area, provinces area. Prime Minister said recent cases about the countries accepting refugees are not successful. But we can't agree with this. If there is no success story, we can be a success story. We can find a solution. Yes.
You said we have to find a solution to the problems. That means we cannot find a solution. If we can find a solution, it's not sure the problem solved. Then how will you solve the economic problems and job problems that arise from accepting refugees?
We can provide temporary shelter to refugees, connect them to work or money by themselves. If it takes hold, it will be better for refugees and all of us. Still, as an example, France has belonged for the countries with high refugee acceptance rates. But did France fail because they couldn't handle it? No, France failed growing economically and militarily, so we can do it successfully too. According to the ratio of national debt to GDP in Korea, is quite stable compared with other countries. In the case of France mentioned earlier, even though their GDP ranking is higher than ours, their national ratio debt is 113%. As an example, United States and Japan are also close to 170% to 133%. Considering this, Korea has good conditions that are reasonable to accommodate refugees. Our first reason is that we have responsibility to protect refugees. We have a responsibility to protect them as a member of UN Refugee Agency in a well-developed country. Also, if you face a harsh life in real life or video, you have no choice but help. According to the Geneva Convention, members have an obligation to protect refugees. It is meaningful because Geneva Convention is a foundation of international law today and was intended to make key promises between hostile countries in the face of the world. For this reason, I firmly assert that we should accept refugees.
Next, the Deputy Prime Minister for the government, Grace, will give her speech.
Good evening, my name is Grace and I'm the Deputy Prime Minister for the government. We are proving that we, the government, should not accept refugees. I will read the letter of the opposition segment. Then I will continue with the government segment. Moving along, the letter of the opposition argued that we have a responsibility to protect refugees because we are the member of the refugee agency and developed country. In a situation where refugees are coming out internationally, it is right to accept refugees. However, whether the way forward is to accommodate refugees into our country is a completely different matter. You can also have them by sponsoring or sending refugees to the necessities. Also, refugee conventions with center for assistance and protection as a duty, the refugee assistance is mandatory. Based on Article 2, Paragraph 7 of the Charter of the United States, that the United Nations doesn't have authority to interfere in matters within the domestic jurisdictions of any country. Therefore, the government doesn't need to accept refugees. Now, to continue with our term segments, our third reason is that labor integration is difficult due to lack of settlement system. According to the result of the Pew Research Center in July 2016, the majority of Italian, Greek, and French nationals, including Hungary, interpreted refugee assistance as taking away their jobs and social welfare benefits. Also, our country does not have a perfect policy for refugees to settle in the labor markets. In this situation where refugees are not mixed in the labor markets, the acceptance of refugees could create the second Molenbeek districts. Belgium's Molenbeek has about 30% foreign nationals and more than 40% have returned from foreign countries. However, children are preferred to come as discrimination against immigrants becomes severe due to lack of equal opportunities in the labor markets or the housing markets. In fact, the unemployment rate in Molenbeek districts is more than 24% and is even higher. The last reason we support the motion of the floor is because accepting refugees is an income burden. South Korea is an advanced country. However, there are a lot of internal social and economic problems. Also, Korea is not rich enough to invest in refugees for outsiders. In addition, we are already accepting North-Korean factors. The negative view of North-Korean factor has not yet been solved. Moreover, building a proper support system for refugee settlement requires cost. In fact, according to Professor Park Ho-young's paper in 2018, it is said that there should be premise that refugees should be integrated into the labor market quickly in order to have a positive effect to acceptance of refugees. Adding more refugee officers are carrying more than 20,000 refugees screening a year. And the economic budget is also 2.467 billion, which is equivalent to 0.004% of the governmental budget. For this reason, we do not accept refugees.
Next, the deputy leader of the opposition team, Justin, will give his speech.
Good evening. My name is Justin and I'm the deputy leader of the opposition team. I would like to present a few points made by the opposition team. The government claimed that we should not accept refugees because other European countries will not like us accepting Islam people. However, us accepting North Korean refugees does not cause any religious problem to other countries. According to a North Korean refugee, their citizens praise Kim Jong-un as if he was a god, but nothing at all happens even when you accept them. This means that us accepting refugees will not bring a big religious conflict. What the government team stated secondly is that we should not accept refugees because we may not get a job. However, Korea's employment crisis happens because of all the people wanting to get a job in the metropolitan area, and because there are so many people, it becomes harder to get a job. But just because... No, thank you. That is why the refugees will have no choice but to go to the rural area that has insufficient workforce. So to conclude, the refugees will not at all worsen the employment crisis, but rather solve the dense population and the rural labor shortage. Now I will claim our three main points. Firstly, refugees are good for filling the insufficient workforce. We believe this because refugees have not had the opportunity to be educated for reasons they will be forced to do simple labor. According to Korean refugees law, only a refugee staying in Korea more than 3 years can be qualified as a legal occupant, meaning that the compulsory Yes?
Refugees do not have to stay in Korea because of the evacuation situation is over before 3 years. This law will not apply and other countries lose money.
Even in less than 3 years, the refugees will do simple repetitive labor, so we will not lose money. Secondly, refugees will increase our population. As Korean birth rates are falling, refugees can help us get out of this downtrend. As claimed by the Korean Statistical Office, our birth rate of 2022 had an average of 0.8%, and the world's average number of refugees was 32 million people. Even if we accept 0.05% of them, we could get a 1.6 million bonus in our population. Lastly, we could get an international bond with countries that we accepted refugees from. If we accept refugees, that could be the trigger for an international exchange. Meaning that if we accept refugees from all over the world, we could be an economic powerhouse in no time. According to the Journal of Educational Innovation Research, the ability to solve world problems like refugees leads to sustainable cooperation, which is international exchange.
Next, the government whip level will give his speech.
Good evening, my name is Leo and I am the government whip. We are proving that the government should not accept refugees. I will rebut the opposition's argument point by point. Moving along, the deputy leader of the opposition said that refugees will increase our population. But refugees have nothing to do with population growth, because they return to their own country after an evacuation situation. According to Donga Youth, Ukrainian refugees evacuated but said they wanted to go to Ukraine unconditionally if they had a chance, and that was their dream. And despite the war is not finished, many people return to their own country. Second, he claimed that refugees are good for filling the insufficient workforce. But practically, refugees can be difficult to work with. Refugees came to our country without any preparation, so there is a limit to helping the development of jobs. According to NBC News, According to NBC News, the war happens all of a sudden, so you have to evacuate unexpectedly. If refugees force themselves to do something they have not done before, it can cause damage to the companies and it can also cause an increase in the labor force. Moreover, it can adversely affect them because they can't communicate or get hurt when they evacuate. Lastly, he stated that we can have a bond with the country with refugees. However, helping refugees because of a bond might lead us to more lose. In Korea, it may be harder for those who need to get a job because of the increase in unemployment, plus we have to pay taxes for... Yes?
Right now, if we have money, refugees can find jobs and working days for support and return to economic growth. France is a prime example of this.
All the refugees give us is labor, but we have to support them with jobs, house and food expenses despite their lack of communication and lack of ability. According to iNews 24, feeling the financial burden, it leads to the low birth rate, which is a problem in Korea. In conclusion, we have presented and proven 4 points. We have given evidence that proves each and every point, and they show who they relate and bring us to the conclusion that the motion on the floor, this House, the government of South Korea should not accept refugees, must be passed. Thus, we support the motion and demand that it to be passed.
Next, the opposition whip Min will give his speech.
Good evening. My name is Min. I'm the opposition whip. Today, I will argue against the government whip's refutation. The government whip refuted 3 things from our team. First, he said that the population won't increase because the refugees will return to their own country. But it's all differently. He said that the Ukrainians wanted to go back to their own country because that was their dream. But will all refugees want to go back? I don't think so. According to a newspaper, it said that Ukrainians are afraid what will happen the next day, and they said they just want to think how to survive from war. Will people who saw like this want to go back to their own country? To me, I would rather live in other countries that are safe with no war. And maybe some of the refugees would like to live in our country more than their country. According to the Ministry of Justice data, before COVID-19 occurred in 2019, the resident alien increased 4.87%. And if our people and refugees fall in love, they'll make a family. If they make a family, we'll have kids. And if the kid's nationality is Korea, our population will increase. As claimed by the Ministry of Justice data, in 2020, the multicultural families was up to 230,502. That means that refugees can increase our population. And the next thing the government whip said that if we give refugees a job and if they make a problem, it will cause a lot of damage. But if we teach them how to work differently, they might not make a damage to our companies or countries. And in these days, people try to get a job that are easy and comfortable. According to the farmers' newspaper, it said that farmers need more people to harvest the crops with them. There are lots of crops, but there are only few farmers harvesting the crops, so some of the farmers give up harvesting the crops in that season. If we give refugees these jobs, we can get more crops and we can be more wealthier. And the last thing the government whip said that we have less place for refugees and people who pay taxes might get burdened. But there's a solution for this problem. First, mentioned by the Happy Beans, it said that almost 5.8 million people donated to the refugees and the money was almost $25 million. Like the Happy Beans, we can make a campaign and if people donate, we can use that money to the refugees. Only people who want to help can donate the money. We don't have to use taxes. And the place for the refugees, we can give a place where there are less houses and less people. There was a TV program named In Any Way We Can. It said that Gunwi will be the first place that will disappear in the future. We can give some place to the refugees. Then we can save Guni and we can save the refugees. We can save both of them. In conclusion, we have presented and proven 4 points. We have given evidence that proves each and every point and then shown who relate and bring us to the conclusion that the motion on the floor, the government of South Korea should accept that refugees must be passed. Thus, we support the motion and demand that it would be passed.
Next, the reply speaker of the government Mike will give his speech.
Good evening. My name is Mike and I am the reply speaker of the government. The motion on the floor is this House, the government of South Korea should not accept refugees. We, the government team, have clearly shown you the 4 points that support this motion. First, our country is not a great power. Although the media says that Korea is an economic powerhouse and is recognized around the world. But Korea's national debt is whopping 970 trillion won. Due to this situation, we do not have conditions to accept, manage, and educate refugees. Second, many powerful countries have accepted refugees, but there was not a single case of accepting refugees and benefiting from countries' finances, defense, and other aspects. Third, no matter how much refugees are accommodated, the employment and unemployment crisis may not change in our country, but rather worsen. It makes no sense to fill jobs when there are no jobs for our people. Lastly, the financial burden is the greatest. As I mentioned earlier, Korea's national debt is currently approaching 907 trillion won. In this situation, we have concern about the financial difficulties as we invest our tax money into refugees. On the other hand, the opposition's argument accepting refugees will increase the population of the South Korea. But this is not necessarily true. According to refugee law, it defines refugees as foreigners. This means that the refugees do not affect the population of South Korea. Second, they even claim that accepting refugees increases labor force. However, according to Cost-Head Employment and Labor, the citizens of Republic of Korea do not have a place to work over the past few years. Furthermore, the opposition team stated that it is the duty for us to protect refugees. So Korea should consider to accept refugees more carefully. Also, they said accepting refugees will lead us to formation ties with the countries. But this is unlikely. Based on what the evidence is reciprocity said, diplomatic friction with other countries cannot be avoided if refugees are accepted to form ties with the countries. We have shown all the opposition's arguments to be weak, if not false. Therefore, we have won this debate. Thank you.
Finally, the reply speaker of the opposition, Mario, will give a speech.
Good evening. My name is Mario, and I am the reply speaker of the opposition. The motion on the floor is this House: the government of South Korea should not accept refugees. Using solid and relevant evidence, we, the opposition, given 4 reasons why this motion should be rejected. First, Korea should accept refugees because it has the lowest birth rate. Accepting refugees into our country can solve the population decrease problem. Second, we can increase our labor force. This means we can increase our economic power too. Third, we must protect and take care of refugees. Refugees are in need because of war, food, thirst, poverty, etc. We, as members of the UN Refugee Association, must help them. Fourth, we can make good relationships with refugee countries. Accepting refugees into our country can trigger a national exchange. This can lead our country to be stronger. On the other hand, the government team argued that Korea does not have enough power to accept refugees. But Korea is an advanced country. We have proper power to accept them. Also, we can increase our economy. And they stated that recent case of other countries accepting refugees is not successful. But if there is no success story, we can make a first success story with refugees. They even claim that allowing refugees to work in Korea is difficult. But this is not necessarily true because we can pay them minimum wage. According to refugees law, Korea recognizes the right of refugees to work in Korea. Furthermore, the government claims that accepting refugees is an economic problem, but we can get rid of useless department. Now, we have not only proved our case, but also we have defeated all of the government's arguments. For this reason, we surely won this debate. Thank you.
That concludes today's debate. Now, to proceed with the evaluation and the selection of MVP for today's debate, judges, please finish your grading. Audience, you are welcome to choose the MVP of your choice by scanning the QR code that can be found on the program. As it will take some time, we will be showing a mentoring video clip from 광주경안 JL's senior students from 2022. Thank you.
심사가 마무리되는 동안 고객 여러분께서는 그 프로그램 맨 뒷장에 보시면은 QR코드로 휴대폰 카메라를 스캔하시면은 오늘의 MVP를 선정하실 수 있습니다. 그리고 선생님들께서는 앞에 칠성님께서는 심사 플러스 MVP 선정 2가지를 해주시면 되고 뒤에 학부모님들께서는 MVP 선정만 해주시면 됩니다. 자, 이제 심사가 종료되었습니다. 결과를 발표하겠습니다. The winning house of today's debate is, congratulations, it is the government team. 김영현 리온, 김민채 그레이스, 황혜준 리오, 김연준 마이크. 축하드립니다. 승리팀에게는 상장과 함께 문화상품권을 선물해드렸고 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 자, 이어서 오늘 참여해준 opposition team will be 김지민 Maria, 김민승 민, 이재훈 Justin, and 김하은 Jessica. And for MC today, 이승하. Thank you. And the last part is the MVP of today's debate is, congratulations. Let's give a round of applause to Kim Young-yeon Rion. 축하합니다. 오늘의 MVP에게는 MVP 수여장과 문화상품권을 증정해드리겠습니다. 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 이것으로 2023년 광주경안 정상어학원 디베이트 배틀을 종료하도록 하겠습니다. 참석해주신 학생 여러분, 학부모님 및 지인 여러분들께 모두 감사드리고 대결을 안전히 귀가해 주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다.